Hello and welcome to the first in our series of Hangout on Airs dedicated to the retail industry. My name's Jess and I'll be your host for today's Hangout on Air session, and we'll be joined by Iain McDougall, Head of Retail for Google Enterprise Australia and New Zealand, and later we'll be joined by Caudle, a geospatial executive based here in Sydney. Today's session will run for about 30 minutes. The first half will be a presentation and the second half will be Q&A. So we really encourage you to submit any questions that you may have for any one of our speakers. On the right-hand side of your browser, you'll see there's a Google form and you can enter your details in there. First up, we have Iain McDougall. He's the Head of Retail for Google Enterprise ANZ, and he's here to have a chat to us about how you can innovate your business and help to compete in today's market. Over to you, Iain.
Thanks, Jess, and hi everybody. Now is a massive time of change in the retail industry, and much of this change is being driven by the technology that's now available to both consumers and to retailers. In fact, what we're really seeing at the moment is a huge shift in the balance of information power from retailers towards consumers, borne out by some of the technologies available in both mobile, social and cloud computing. Today what we're going to talk about are some of the trends that we, Google, see occurring in both the ANZ retail markets as well as those globally. And we're also going to spend a bit of time touching on some of the conversations we're having with our large retail clients and how Google is playing a role in helping them both innovate and transform their businesses to be more competitive in today's retail market. This technology-led change is perhaps no more prevalent than in the path to purchase of a modern consumer. This is what that path to purchase used to look like. This was retail in 2005. You saw something, you decided whether or not you wanted it, and if you did, you bought it. Procter & Gamble used to call this the first moment of truth, and it was the big thing in brand marketing at the time. It was the need to capture the shopper at that first point at which they saw a product. Within the first 6 to 8 seconds of when they saw it, was when they were going to decide whether they wanted it and ultimately buy it. Today though, that path to purchase or that customer journey is more complicated. In fact, we all do this today, whether we're buying a product or a service or anything else. We really see that there is no first moment of truth anymore, but rather the zero moment of truth, or the ZMOT, as shoppers gather information from all kinds of different sources, friends, reviews, social media, across multiple devices, and ultimately buy a product or service, online or offline, but they rarely buy it from the first place they saw it. And then this continues post-purchase. Buyers feed the cycle for the next group of buyers, providing reviews and talking about the product and the retailer from which they purchased it actively on social media or in one-to-one communications. The data start to speak for themselves in terms of some of these multi-channel interactions along this newfound path to purchase. 44% of people research and buy online, 17% visit store and then buy online. This is often referred to as showrooming, as we know. 51% of people research online and then buy in store. And 32% of people will research online, visit the store and then ultimately go back to buying online. But common to all scenarios here is an increase in the total purchases being made via online versus offline channels. To add further to this complexity, we see that technology will be even more disruptive in the next 10 years of retail than it's been in the last 50 years combined. From the advent of the humble barcode back in the 70s, through to QR codes and product listing ads today, and all the way through to Amazon Prime and Google Glass, there's no doubt that technology is going to play an increasingly influential role in shaping the future of retail. So what does this ultimately mean for retailers? Well, whilst on one hand it represents complexity, it also represents the opportunity for retailers to differentiate through innovation, really on 4 primary dimensions. On the web and with mobile, in terms of implementing a digital strategy, with your customers, again via just about every touch point that we saw on that path to purchase slide earlier. Within the retailer's organisation itself, every department and every person across the organisation, and then finally around the data and how retailers can draw greater insight from the vast repositories that they have. So ultimately, what we're here to talk about today is how Google can help. And in our words, how we can transform a retail enterprise and customer experience with Google. Looking at those 4 dimensions again, we see that there are a number of different combinations and interactions of Google products and services that retailers are increasingly adopting. Whether that's Google Apps for productivity, whether it's our geospatial services to help visualize important business data on a map, whether it's making use of some of our cloud platform and cloud service technologies such as storage, App Engine and BigQuery, whether it's optimizing a customer's online search experience, or whether it's about providing technology endpoints and devices to help customers and to help you as a retail organisation drive better outcomes with technology. First, in terms of delivering on digital strategy. Really, I think there's a couple of prime examples of how Google technology has been adopted by major retailers around the world to help to do this. Many of our retail customers are clearly focusing on delivering mobile experiences that are going to delight their customers. We've seen some great examples of this with Caudle in particular, the largest online grocery retailer in the UK, that's using some of our cloud platform and maps technologies to deliver things such as their Where Is My Order app to give shoppers far greater insight as to when they can expect to take delivery and to plan their day accordingly. On a local level, we're seeing Woolworths here in Australia again use combinations of Google App Engine and Google Maps to build and deliver all sorts of consumer-facing mobile and web applications, such as Let's Go Shopping and their delivery tracking. Speedway Motors have chosen to power their online site with Google Search to help enable customers and suppliers to find the parts that they need exactly when they need them. And Net-a-Porter, using real-time data and data sharing via maps and social, both to drive awareness of their brand, but also to show consumers in real time what products are trending in what locations to help drive demand for those specific sets of products. The second way we're really helping retailers to transform and compete is via an improved customer engagement and experience. And again, really here what we're talking about is the way that in-store team members and associates can engage better with customers to help drive loyalty, so that we can use technology such as kiosks to both enhance that in-store experience and to further drive sales, and to generally make the customer feel as though they're the focus of the retailer's attentions, and helping them to really understand that with the greater access to information, that the retailer is able to drive a faster path to purchase cycle. Again, we're seeing this with all sorts of examples around the world. Some of those including Polaroid with their photo bars, who are using Chromebox kiosks to do in-store photo processing that are both very secure and easy for Polaroid to maintain, and give the customer a very fast and real-time experience in terms of processing their digital and physical photos. IKEA are using our indoor mapping products not just to help customers find their stores, but once they're in those stores to have a far greater experience in terms of finding what they need, be it restaurants or particular categories of product throughout some of those very vast IKEA warehouses. And perhaps on a more local level, Dick Smith here in Australia are really using the power of Google Apps so that they can make sure that their team members in store have access to the most up-to-date product information to both delight them and to make sure that they retain that customer in store and close the sale while that customer is in front of them. The third dimension where we're really seeing our technology applied by retailers to make a substantial difference is what we term in the company. And really what we're talking about here is a focus on both boosting innovation and productivity throughout the entire business. And whether that's information flows internally and up and down the supply chain, or whether that's simply using cloud and web-based technologies to drive a greater sense of innovation within the organisation, to reduce the length of product development cycles. Or from a more process-orientated perspective, making sure that information is flowing from support centres and down to stores in a more streamlined way, again to drive greater productivity, profitability and ultimately consistency of information. Woolworths here in Australia is perhaps the most progressive example of use of this technology on a global basis. Google has worked very closely with Woolworths over the last number of years to put technology in the hands of their 200,000 staff in the form of Google Apps, primarily originally as a platform for employee engagement. But over time we've seen Woolworths as an organisation really extend the use of that platform to both enhance the flow of information, but really start to bring some of the internal conversations to life within their organisation through tools such as Google+, and enabling the growth of organic communities of interest across the organisation, really so that they can make sure that the people within their organisation that are like-minded and have a need to be productive and to collaborate have the tools that they need to simply do so. Hangouts, our multi-person video collaboration platform, is also another great example of how retailers, including Woolworths, are enabling teams of people across very vast geographic areas to collaborate or indeed to meet each other face to face via video for the first time. The last dimension on which we see a fantastic update of our technologies amongst the retail sector is really in this area around the data and making use of that data to draw insight and make decisions. As we all know, retailers have huge repositories of data, both customer data, product data, point of sale transactional data and so forth. And these, for retailers today, represent genuine big data problems. What we've also seen is that retailers now have the ability to, or the desire I should say, with the increased advent of the dependence on loyalty programs to drive sales, to really start to make greater use of that data to drive sales and increase customer loyalty. And so we see retailers using Google technologies such as BigQuery and Google Maps to enable actionable insight by taking those internal data repositories, overlaying external data sources as needed, and even visualizing those on a Google map. Perhaps one of the best examples we've seen of this is via the services of analytics companies such as Interactions in the US, who are taking those internal data sources down to the product SKU level and transaction level, bringing in external data sources such as demographic and historical meteorological information, and then predicting down to the SKU level what might happen, for example, when a snowstorm in the northeast of the US hits and what that will do to customer buying behaviour. And this really helps retailers to avoid out-of-stock scenarios and to make sure that they really do have the right products on the right shelves at the right time. So everything that we've just discussed is fundamentally enabled via this technological change that we've been talking about. And really at the heart of that is the internet. When we overlay that with these commonly discussed kind of nexus of forces that we talk about, these internet-enabled forces of social, mobile, data and the cloud, then really what we see is that Google can play a fundamental role in helping to transform and shape the future strategy of retailers through technology. Our pedigree of being born on the web places us right in the middle of those forces, and we're really seeing our retail clients understand that Google can help harness the power of those forces to help them innovate and compete more effectively in the market. So why Google? Well, not only were we born on the web, but our heritage is also in consumer products. So we know a thing or two about delighting end users in the consumer world. We know how to build web-based service that is both simple and beautiful for our billions of users around the world, whether that's YouTube or Android or Gmail or anything in between. We've also got infrastructure at a massive, massive scale. It's that very same scale of infrastructure that we use to deliver google.com search or YouTube. And so our retail customers realise that they no longer need to be in the business of investing in huge amounts of technology infrastructure to deliver services to their customers, but rather they can just get on with doing what they do best, which is ultimately retailing. And of course, we back all of our services with a real focus on our clients' success. We understand what is required to deliver these services at an enterprise and to a corporate grade. And so we back them up, all the things we do that our retail customers need from a critical technology partner, including phenomenal uptime, real genuine commercial SLAs, and of course, world-class 24/7 support. So that's it in summary. We believe that the technology that we bring to bear is really helping our retail clients to innovate and compete. And the 4 dimensions that we're doing that are on the web, with the customer, in the company, and around the data. Look forward to taking some questions from you now.
That's great, thanks Iain. Now is a great chance to introduce you to Ryan Caudle, who'll be joining us in a second. And he is from our geospatial team, sitting in the Google Sydney office. So now it's time for question and answers. So let me remind you that you can continue to ask questions for either one of our presenters over the next 10 minutes or so. And you can do that by clicking on the Google form on the right-hand side of the browser and submitting your questions there. We've already had a couple of questions come in over the last 10 minutes. So one of the questions that I'm going to throw out to our panel is, our business has a successful loyalty program, yet we think there is an untapped potential in the data. What ideas might Google have to unlock this data? So over to you, Ryan and Iain.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think as we mentioned throughout the presentation, retailers have got some of the largest repositories of data of just about any industry type that we deal with. And so what we're seeing is retailers, first of all, take stock of what they've got and realise that actually this is something pretty valuable, and then starting to use tools like some of our cloud-based analytical tools to compile all of those data sources into one place, and then use some of that power of the massive scale of, I guess, of infrastructure to analyse and query that data so that they can get some meaningful output. And once they've got that output, I guess they've then got all sorts of options as to what they can do with that. And one of those things, I guess, would be to put it onto a map in some way.
Yep, absolutely. So what we're finding with a lot of retailers these days is that although they may have invested in business intelligence tools and analytical capabilities and some of the back-end infrastructure to do that, the very results themselves come in more forms of tables, more forms of data, and it's not always easy to interpret for humans. Mm-hmm. So humans are used to seeing in pictures, they're used to seeing in graphs and that sort of thing. So one of the ways that retailers use Google Maps for Business to better visualize their data is by overlaying those results on top of the map, combining it with third-party data, such as data that might be related to the census, incomes, distribution of wealth, that sort of thing, as well as data that they might purchase from other organizations. And
Sure.
in doing so, they layer it up and form a better visual, a better picture of the overall truth.
Yeah, we've definitely started to see some Australian retailers do that, and it's probably fair to say that in the US and the UK they're a little bit ahead of the curve. I know Caudle in the UK we're certainly starting to draw some insight from their data in that way as well.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Iain. Now, another question that we've had come through from the audience is from a audience member that says, we have a huge distributed workforce with which we're keen to connect and engage, but we don't want to give store staff email accounts. What are other retailers doing to connect with their team members, but not distract them from their day-to-day job of serving customers?
Okay, yeah, look, that's a great question as well. It's one that I think is probably at the heart of most of the conversations we're having with retailers, especially in Australia. Because as I guess the question says, retailers have got huge workforces, and they're distributed over very large geographic areas, in-store and support centres and distribution centres and so on. And particularly in Australia, given how big we are as a country, there's a real opportunity, we believe, to start to use technology as the means to help those employees engage with each other. And so, while we're seeing Google Apps as a suite of products that's getting huge adoption amongst retailers, it's actually not Gmail and email that's forming, I guess, the core part of how the team members out in stores are being kind of brought into the conversation or being engaged with. And so I think probably more than any other technology that we offer, Google Plus as the enterprise social platform is really starting to play a huge role, like I said during the presentation, of allowing communities of interest of people who need to be talking to each other to organically build their own communities, to talk and collaborate. Because the last thing any retailer wants, as I guess the questioner has said, is having store associates and team members on their phones tapping away at email. But the enterprise social tools, when delivered in kind of a secure and manageable way, such as the way Google Plus can be done, is really a good way to both enable that engagement with the workforce from executive levels down, but also from a horizontal kind of community of peers. Woolworths is a great example of this, and who are seeing the store managers and even the individual divisional managers within a store start to communicate with their peers both in the same city or on opposite sides of the country in a way that they definitely can't. And what they're using that for is to I guess share ideas and best practices, including merchandising displays or internal process changes that they may have seen be successful, in their case in the delicatessen or in some other department within the supermarket.
Thanks, Iain. Now we've got a few more questions that are coming through thick and fast over the online form. Feel free to keep submitting your questions using that form on the right-hand side of your browser. This is probably one for you, Ryan, submitted by an audience member. Now they say, our company has developed a mobile app, but we're not seeing many benefits from it at the moment. What are other companies doing to get more tangible benefits from mobile and from location?
That's a really interesting question. More and more of the retailers that we're working with are developing mobile applications. It's a bit of a phenomenon, as people know. Unfortunately, not all of those mobile apps are successful against some of the success factors that the companies have set up. There's a few ways that organizations can include location, geo, and social into these mobile apps in order to make them more effective. One of those is to actually location enable your mobile app. And in doing so, what you can do is start to uncover interesting trends and statistics about when people are actually coming to visit your store. So you can see things like time of day. Is my store more popular on a Monday versus a Friday, for example? You can see distance traveled and time and current traffic. So how long did that customer need to spend in traffic to get to your store versus how long might it take them to get to a competitor's store, which will give you really interesting information about how well placed your store is, opening hours and that sort of thing. Another thing you can do is location-based offers as well. Let's say, for example, you've passed through a geofence and that particular store knows that you're 2 kilometers away. You've opted in to receive alerts about specials that they might have going on. That particular retailer can send you an offer at the right place at the right time for you to come in, perhaps go outside of your way to go into the store and make a purchase, right? The other really interesting and emerging field with regards to location, mobile apps, and retail has to do with indoor location and really fine-grained tracking, as it were, to see path of purchase within a physical store. So one of the interesting things there is if you can measure the total number of people who are walking into a store, kind of the path they take. If you're a hardware store, for example, do you go through the timber location, then go to paints, and then go to tools? Or do you go to 3 completely different sections, such as gardening, right? How long do you spend in each of those sections? And conversion is also a very big issue as well, right? So by location enabling your mobile app, you can actually see when people might pass by a checkout on the way out of their store, or if they just leave through the exit without going to the checkout, right? So you can find out things like conversion, tie that back to your online store, and really get a 360-degree view of what the customer is doing in both your digital and your physical worlds.
Thanks, Ryan. Now, unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions today. But if you do have any more questions, please feel free to still continue to submit them using the form on the right-hand side of your browser. Alternatively, you can head across to our Google Enterprise homepage and press on the Get in Touch button, and someone in our team will get back in touch with you as soon as possible. Now, if you'd like to click on the green button on the browser as well, you can submit our feedback form, which will give you the chance to give feedback on today's Hangout so that we can make changes and make the next Hangouts in the series fantastic and tailored to all your needs. Speaking of the next Hangouts in the series, we have another one coming up in a month's time, so we'd love you to join us. You can register for those on the Retail Hangout on Air registration page. Thank you again for your time today. Hope you have a great afternoon.